So coming to the center or reading about Buddhism or watching YouTube videos, on Buddhism, you'll hear the term Buddha and Dharma or quite often. So Buddha obviously mostly represents the enlightened Buddha from 600 years ago, and the state of enlightenment. So not just a historical reference. So when we have the Buddha here, is in a way representing our potential, what we can become. And obviously I don't mean that in the literal sense, becoming a bloke, obviously, but more the qualities that are represented in the Buddha are the qualities and the characteristics that we can actually start to recognize in ourselves and start to develop and work towards them, or have some affinity towards them. So when the word Dharma or Buddha Dharma is used, mostly when they're asked, like when I asked the guys at breakfast, they came up with the standard ones, which was the truth, things as they really are, and the other one, the Buddha's teaching. So those are the kind of quite usual ways that the word Dharma or Buddha Dharma are used. But, or however, I came up with something. I'm not going to look at him, he makes me laugh. I came up with something which is Buddha Dharma characteristics. So characteristics are, I just want to sort of in a way make the contrast to personality. So, you have a personality. Sometimes your personality, for people who have known you for a long time, they'll say, you're just like the same you was when you were 4, or, you've still got those personality traits. For example, they're qualities which are personal, particular to you. And within your personal traits and qualities, you can notice that certain things are very positive, and you can develop them and they become character traits or positive character qualities. So just using an example of myself for a moment. I think anyone who's known me since I was very young would say that I always had an enthusiastic personality. But I saw that as a very positive thing, to be enthusiastic about positive things. So although sometimes my enthusiasm drives people mad, or irritates, like, just leave me alone. But actually, I think that being enthusiastic about positive things is really good, even at 8:30 in the morning. He's in the community. Oh my God. So it's become a character trait. It's not so much personal anymore. It did grow out of that, Zebedee type boing 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 kind of 4-year-old, 5-year-old, but it's now hopefully a bit more mature, a bit more direct. Hopefully, it is. And so it's a character trait which I think is general, and that's partly how I'm defining the difference between personality and character trait. Is a character trait is something general. So you can all be enthusiastic, potentially, about positive things. You can all have the sense of saying, emotionally, yes, I'm up for this. This is a good thing, for example. It's not just me. It's a general thing. So with this term, Buddha Dharma characteristics, I think it's very useful to have the view that you already have qualities and characteristics that are very positive. And it can be really useful to take time in your life, say with a notebook or a journal or a piece of paper, to write down your positive characteristics. I'm a very determined kind of person, you've got resolve, you're loyal. There's all kinds of qualities like that are more character type things. And for you to kind of become aware for yourself what your characteristics are. It takes maybe a little bit of time to get used to thinking in these terms. But when you do it, when you write it down or when you think about it, it's a big thing. What it does, it just expands your awareness of yourself beyond your usual ideas about yourself. It makes you more self-aware, actually. And I think that's part of the path. Part of the Dharma path is to be more aware. And it also helps you to be more confident in your positive characteristics and qualities. So, I do stick with things that I think are important. I do have a sense of, values, and I do hold by them. That's a characteristic, and that is important to me. And you can then, that confidence arises out of that. So part of the Buddha Dharma characteristics, the path of characteristics, is that you start to be aware of characteristics that you have that sort of in some way mirror or echo or relate to dharmic characteristics. So I wanted to give an example. Now, very often practicing the Dharma path can be including contradictions. And one has to find a way of coming to terms with contradictions. So an example that I came up with in the tea break is the word holding. So this is a very paradoxical kind of quality. You can hold on to something in a very willful, stubborn way that is just got no flexibility or pliancy or perspective in it. It's like this, I'm going to do this, I'm like that, I don't care what you think. And you hold. And there's this kind of holding is basically antithetical to dharmic experience. But one could say that the word holding can be used in a dharmic context, in the context of growth and development, which is another way of saying dharma context. So you hold on, you stay with, you keep contact with threads of what's important. Valued friendships, for example, in the community, in the sangha, you hold to them. But part of the tone of this kind of holding is it's held lightly. It's held, but it's not. I'm looking at him because we've been friends for years. You'd never think that, but yeah, we have actually. The way. So, but we hold, there is that quality. We hold the friendship. You know, we keep the continuity. And there's something very positive about that. And it's a characteristic of growing and developing, that you keep, stay with a continuity of something which you think is really valuable. So you've got these two ways of holding. You've got this physically, shoulders up in the air, that's holding. Obsession, in that really negative sense, is a holding. Being caught up and with something, just going round and round and round with it, is being in a holding pattern of something, and obviously not helpful or positive. Whereas, there are in your friendships, or the quality of having care and kindness, there is a holding of that. That you keep a connection with that quality of care and kindness, being considerate, for example. And another example of that is keeping clear about things. So there might be a lot going on in a certain area of your life, and lots of do this, do that, do this, do that, but you're clear about the main thing that you're going to pay attention to, and you keep that continuity. You, as it were, hold on to that. But again, lightly. It's not like that. So you see what I mean? It's very paradoxical, because they're both a kind of holding. But one needs to find the transition from the unhelpful holding, I'm right, you're wrong, this is the way to do it, and that's not the way to do it. Black and white attitudes, right, wrong, to a process, holding to, staying with the process of discovery and exploration, and what helps and what doesn't help, and being open, actually. And there you have another big paradox, which are characteristic of the Dharma path, which is you hold to something, but you're open. You do have things that you think are important and value in your life, and you cherish, but at the same time, you're open. You're open to other ways of perceiving the same thing, other perspectives on the same thing. So the Dharma path very often is a matter of dancing, you could say, with paradoxes and different things which are different. That's a stupid way of putting it, but different things which are different. So, for example, I'm just going to give a few examples as they come to mind. Being persistent can definitely be a positive character trait. You stay with something through the ups and downs. Yet, there's a negative type of obsessive over focus, persistence, which is not positive, where you keep going, banging your head against the wall long after you've made a dent in the wall and damaged your head. So there's certain things about qualities like persistence and determination, which can be seen negatively and positively. And I think determination is a good one, a good example of that. You can have very negative, stubborn, narrow determination, or you can have determination which takes in change. Okay, I don't need to do this anymore. It's finished. For example, so one is aiming to be aware of characteristics that you assess as being healthy and positive and helpful in your life. And I think, again, it can be very useful to sit down. We don't have time to do it now, but to sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and just write down positive characteristics that help you practice your growth and development and the Dharma. Just to become, to get a bigger vocabulary, actually, of your character traits and positive character traits. So the part of the direction of what I wanted to say this morning is you work from where you are. I was talking with a very famous, she's dead now, but very famous in her time, Zen woman master called Joko Beck. You might have heard her books. Great, wonderful teacher and person, and we were friends. She lived in San Diego, and she had this wonderful Zen center in San Diego. And we were talking. I said, "Well, what are your biggest problems in running the center?" And she said, oddly, it's people, usually young people, who are too idealistic about the enlightenment and don't take into account how they actually are. So they're sort of jumping over themselves to being enlightened and not taking into account that actually they've got lots of things that need looking at and changing and addressing in their behavior. So the other thing, I think it'll make people in the center, run the center, laugh. I said, "Well, what's your other big problem?" And she said, "We've got too much money." The center never has enough money. And I said, "How does that work?" She said, "Americans are just really generous. They just give all the time. If they see something of value, they give. And actually, some of the time, I just don't know what to do with it all," which is quite a positive problem for her to have. But my main point in that is, if you have a tendency to want to jump over yourself and what's happening with you to get to enlightenment, you will eventually have to come back and deal with how you are, your personality traits and those kinds of things. So you might as well just start right from the beginning, taking in how you are and pick out the positive things and acknowledge them and develop them. And then over time, start to get the sense of how they in some way are referencing deeper qualities. So you might, for example, be kind and considerate. And that could be a direct line to the qualities of compassion of the Buddha. for example. So in that way, you get a sense that you're growing and developing towards qualities which go beyond just individual limitations into something much greater, which is represented by the Buddha or Buddha qualities. Good. Okay, so just got time for one or two, perhaps. Any questions from either the floor here, or if you want to type it into chat, if we've got time, maybe. Any question about this topic for me out of all of this, that maybe coming out of the group as well?
I ask one question to our group. It was, to what extent, and I was reflecting on my own case, to what extent has it changed or evolved over time, and to what extent some of the personality traits that I was born with have stayed, or maybe have evolved, or new ones have come in, and have to what extent have I made a conscious decision to nurture some of them and maybe not others as much, and how is that going to change from now onwards?
In a way, it's a question to yourself,
yes.
Isn't it? So the question is, choosing the personality and the characteristic traits that you want to nurture. And I do actually think that it's a very important issue, because there might be characteristic traits which initially you thought positive and helpful, and then you realize that they give you a lot, and others, a lot of trouble unnecessarily. And that as traits and personality traits and characteristics, I get to think of, I've got a friend, he's very argumentative, just for the sake of being argumentative. He thinks it's a good thing. It's just a pain. He's not present. No, he's not.
He should be.
Huh? I'll tell him later. So, that's an example. You think, no, it's good. I'm being provocative. No, you're just wasting time. Yeah.
So perhaps it's something we brought up was, should the personality traits that you consider good, should they be ones that you view as good, or ones that other people view as good?
Well, you have to assess it. Because people's assessment of you might be based on a rather twisted view of themselves and what they think is valuable. In the end, it has to be your assessment. But, I do think that other people's view of you can be very surprising and very useful. I gave the example recently. Quite a long time back, I was in a group, and we were saying positive, appreciative things about each other, and we had actually lived together for quite a long time. It was at a retreat center, and someone was leaving, and so part of his privilege was to say things about all the rest of us, and we were sort of like, oh no, really no, go. And he said, he put it this way, actually. What he said to the group, what you don't realize is that Vajradaka is the most disciplined person here. And I was like, what are you talking about? How can that be true? And he said, no, it's true. And then he explained it. And it was very, very useful to hear it, because I would never have thought of myself as disciplined. But actually, when I took his comment, I realized, not in contrast to the others, but actually that is a character trait that just sort of happened. I don't know if I certainly didn't have it as a kid. That definitely is true. But I think it grew out of practice, actually. The whole thing of checking and coming back and staying with, noticing what's helpful and so on. So we've run out of time. I just want to say thank you to everyone for being so positively engaged and in everything that we did.